Welcome, all of you, to this very rainbow, colorful session on what exactly is happening in the Indian languages ecosystem as far as the rainbow writing, reading, critiquing culture is concerned. I am very glad that the Jaipur BookMark has always been at the spearhead of the social movements that are informing our existence, that are consuming us, and has always given a very respectable platform to discuss what exactly is happening on ground. And therefore, today I have a medical practitioner, a national level and international level winning educator, and a journalist with me talk about their independent experiences on how they broke into their language writing journey and what kind of challenges did they encounter when they started this journey from being closeted, claustrophobic, from being a closeted claustrophobic life to now completely consuming the sky as their own with their forays into the published word worlds. Kinshuk, starting with you. We know that सफ़ेद कोट और मौलाना आज़ाद मेडिकल कॉलेज की गलियाँ वहाँ से आपका 90% दिन निकलता है और जो बाकी का 10% दिन है आपका you go about meandering in the deepest meninges of your mind and annals of your heart. I've learned that terminology for you. To give voice to what exactly has been what started as a teenage realization to a lifetime of living experiences.
Thank you so much for learning that terminology for me. Um, no, I think it's very difficult. You are my publisher. You, of course, know how difficult it is to navigate the Hindi literary sphere. Just to state, when I started off, Ruth Vanita has just come out with a collection of short stories from Hindi to English, which is called On the Edge. And you see, in 100 years of Hindi publishing, there are 16 or 17 stories, and some of them are novel excerpts also. So, there are not even 16 to 17 stories that have been published in 100 years of Hindi literature. So that is the kind of deficiency that we have. Literature has this way of sort of allowing people to immerse in experiences. And because of the lack of stories and novels and all the literature that should have appeared so much earlier, people have a very rigid stance on homosexuality. So I have a couple of examples. I would rather state them here. I was speaking at the Aaj Tak festival, which seems to be like a very big affair for Hindi authors and a lot of other authors. And a celebrity anchor is asking me, is homosexuality a perversion? What is it? Is homosexuality sex? And I think, these kind of questions, if they're being asked to you, it shows how much we lack and how much we need to sort of progress ahead. I wrote a short story where there is this earthworm and there's this gay man who is sort of comparing himself to an earthworm and the negligence he's sort of facing. And people were quick to say that, this is the accurate description. These people are like those earthworms and they should be culled and they should be killed. And that is the kind of response that I have got, in the initial bits. But then, with Aditi's persistence, the book came out, which is Ye Dil Hai Ki Chor Darwaza. And eventually, we sort of made a little transition. I got a couple of calls from older men who were living in closets, and they've had their entire span of life as a so-called heterosexual man with marriage and having children. But then they called me and told me that, this is the first time we are reading your stories, and we feel that, oh my God, this is what we have experienced all through our lives. And then there are so many people, in India who don't have an access to English and English publishing. And for them, Hindi Hindi is the base. For some, language, the regional languages are the language of their expression, and they don't understand more than that. So I think what it has actually done is to allow, this my book has sort of done is to ensure that uh, people start to get sensitized. And I think, we've been talking about Booker, we've been talking about all of these things. And I think one of the major reasons why translations are happening, and now more so translations of queer literatures are happening, which is allowing also people in metropolises to immerse themselves in the experience of the hinterlands, those experiences which are very raw and they need to be told. So I think this is how I understand it.
Also, just adding to it, that when we thought of doing Kinshuk's first story collection, we were very sure that there is a huge possibility that it might just get very lost in the mire of mainstream publishing and the entire tone of basically marketing and positioning those books. And therefore, the idea of Satrangi Vani came along, the special imprint for the LGBTQ books. Bharatji, Belingi, which I'll translate it for the convenience of our audience. Belingi translates to the one without the gender, the one without the sexual identity. This is his novel that was first written in Rajasthani and now has been translated into Hindi. और हम भरत जी से ये जानना चाहते हैं भरत जी कि आप जब ये कथानक शुरुआत से आपके पास कहानियाँ मुझे लगता है लेखक के पास चल के आती हैं, तो मैं इसलिए कह रही हूँ कि कथानक आपके पास चल के आया। आज दोपहर में जैसे आपने मुझे बताया कि ये जिया हुआ जीवन है बेलिंगी में, और कहीं ना कहीं आपके घराने के, आपके कुनबे के, टाबर के ये कहानियाँ साथ में जुड़ी हुई हैं, हम उसके बारे में कुछ जानना चाहते हैं।
धन्यवाद अदिति। देखिए, राजस्थानी समाज परंपरागत समाज है और सेक्स जैसे विषय पर, ट्रांसजेंडर जैसे विषय पर राजस्थानी में हालांकि लिखा गया है, लेकिन इतना ज़्यादा नहीं लिखा गया जिसको हम संपूर्ण कह सकें। बिज्जी से लेकर के आज तक के जितने भी राजस्थानी के कथाकार हैं, उन सब ने इन विषयों को छुआ है, लेकिन राजस्थानी में ट्रांसजेंडर पर लिखा ये पहला उपन्यास है। चूँकि मैं ये गांव से आता हूँ और मेरे नज़दीक एक मेरा शहर लगता है हिसार, जो हरियाणा में है, हालांकि मैं मूल रूप से राजस्थान का हूँ। तो जब मैं बचपन में हिसार जाता था तो बसों के अंदर मैं ट्रांसजेंडर को वहाँ भीख मांगते हुए देखता था, और वो अलग तरह के लोग होते थे, जिसका शरीर आधा स्त्री का होता था, आवाज़ पुरुष की होती थी, और मैं उनको देख देख के सोचता था कि ये क्या है। और जब उनके बारे में मैं मेरे पिताजी से या किसी से बात करता तो वो मुझे कहते नहीं, इन पे बात नहीं करनी। यानी इतनी भ्रांतियाँ थी ट्रांसजेंडर के विषय में। और जब मैं धीरे धीरे बड़ा हुआ और इनके बारे में जब मुझे लगा कि इसके बारे में मुझे लिखना चाहिए, 21वीं सदी आ गई और ट्रांसजेंडर के विषय में अभी तक लिखा नहीं गया है, तो मैंने इन पे लिखने की सोची। तो मैं उनके बारे में कुछ जानता नहीं था, और बगैर जाने बगैर तथ्य की बात किए हुए अगर मैं लिखता हूँ तो एक लेखक का लिखना उचित नहीं है। तो मैंने ट्रांसजेंडर के लोगों से मिला जा कर के, लेकिन किसी भी ट्रांसजेंडर से मिला उसने मुझे अपनी तरफ से कोई रिस्पॉन्स नहीं दिया। वो अपनी किसी बात को मेरे साथ साझा नहीं करना चाहते थे। मैं ट्रांसजेंडर के बारे में हनुमानगढ़ गया, वहाँ एक बहुत बड़ा उनका सम्मेलन हुआ, वहाँ भी गया, लेकिन जहाँ भी गया किसी ने मुझे हाथ नहीं धरने दिया। फिर मेरे एक मित्र हैं, उनके मार्फत वहाँ हनुमानगढ़ में एक पार्षद हैं, उनसे बात हुई, और वो पार्षद मुझे एक लेखक के रूप में जानते थे। तो उनसे जब बात हुई तो जब मैंने एक शब्द उनसे कहा था कि भी आप क्यों लिखना चाहते हैं, मैंने कहा कि मैं ट्रांसजेंडर की पीड़ा को समाज के सामने दिखाना चाहता हूँ, तो वो एकदम से चिढ़ गए कि आप हमारी पीड़ा को कैसे दिखा सकते हैं, आप हमारी पीड़ा नहीं दिखा सकते। यानी उनके भीतर में इतना दर्द था कि वो एक लेखक के सामने भी खुल करके अपनी बात नहीं बताना चाहते थे। लेकिन धीरे धीरे मैंने उनका विश्वास जीता, और जो कुछ भी उन्होंने ट्रांसजेंडर के बारे में बताया, ट्रांसजेंडर के बारे में सबसे बड़ी हमारे समाज में भ्रांतियाँ बहुत ज़्यादा है। ट्रांसजेंडर के बारे में इतनी भ्रांतियाँ हैं जिसकी कोई सीमा नहीं है। मैंने इस उपन्यास में कोशिश की है कि उन सारी भ्रांतियों का निराकरण करूं, और ऐसा भी नहीं हो कि मैं आपको सिर्फ और सिर्फ सूचना देता हुआ जाऊं, आपको ऐसा लगे कि मैं जो है वो एक जीवन गाथा बता रहा हूं। क्योंकि लेखक की सबसे बड़ी ताकत ये नहीं है कि वो चीज़ों को जानता है, लेखक की सबसे बड़ी ताकत ये है कि वो परकाया प्रवेश का हुनर उसमें कितना है। मैं जब लिखता हूँ, जब मैं स्त्री पर लिखता हूँ तो मैं स्त्री होता हूँ, क्योंकि जब मैं ट्रांसजेंडर पे लिखता हूँ तो मैं ट्रांसजेंडर का जीवन जीता हूँ। जब मैं कोई भावुक किस्से को लिखता हूँ तो मैं मेरे उपन्यास में खुद जो है वो अनेक बार रोता हूँ, मैं खुद, मेरे रोंगटे खड़े हो जाते हैं जब मैं लिखता हूँ, आंसू मुझे आ जाते हैं। यानी ट्रांसजेंडर पे लिखना या किसी और पे लिखना, हालांकि ये पहले माना गया था कि स्त्री विमर्श पे लिखने के लिए स्त्री ज़्यादा बेहतर हो सकती है, तो घोड़े की पीड़ा को लिखने के लिए घोड़ा होना, मुझे नहीं लगता कि घोड़ा होना ज़रूरी है। हाँ, घोड़े की पीड़ा को समझना, उसकी काया के अंदर प्रवेश करने का हुनर है, वो लेखक को आना चाहिए। तो वो ट्रांसजेंडर के बारे में पूरी चीज़ों को देख करके, और जब मैंने इस उपन्यास को लिखा तो मुझे लगा कि मैं खुद एक ट्रांसजेंडर हूँ, और मेरी जो पीड़ाएँ हैं वो सिर्फ मेरी नहीं है बल्कि सारे ट्रांसजेंडर की पीड़ाएँ हैं। उन पीड़ाओं को मैंने इसमें लिखने की कोशिश की, और ये उपन्यास हो सकता है कि ट्रांसजेंडर पे दूसरी भारतीय भाषाओं में खूब सारे उपन्यास आए हैं, लेकिन उन उपन्यासों को भी मैंने पढ़ा है। इस उपन्यास में उन दूसरे उपन्यासों से थोड़ा अलग इसलिए है कि ये ट्रांसजेंडर जो बेलिंगी है वो खुद के होने का सबूत देता है। वो भीख नहीं मांगना चाहता, वो ताली पीटना नहीं चाहता, वो समाज के अंदर एक खुद ट्रांसजेंडर होकर के और समाज में ट्रांसजेंडर की भूमिका के साथ ही समाज को दिखाना चाहता है कि मैं ट्रांसजेंडर हूँ, लेकिन मैं ये कर सकता हूँ, मुझ में कोई कमी नहीं है। अनेक अनेक सवाल हैं कि क्या हमारे भारतीय पुराने ग्रंथों में और में शिखंडी की कथाएं और आपने सबने पढ़ी है, तो सवाल खड़ा होता है कि क्या एक ट्रांसजेंडर है कि उसको सेना में भर्ती होने का अधिकार नहीं है? क्या एक ट्रांसजेंडर है वो सेना का सेनापति नहीं हो सकता? हमारे समाज में बहुत सारी भ्रांतियाँ हैं, उन सारी भ्रांतियों का निराकरण जो है वो करने की कोशिश मैंने की है। कितना सफल हो पाया हूँ, कितना नहीं हो पाया हूँ, चूँकि ये तो पाठक ही ज़्यादा बता पाएंगे, क्योंकि पहले ये मूल मैं राजस्थानी में लिखता हूँ। राजस्थानी के बाद में मैंने ये सोचा कि राजस्थानी की इतनी बड़ी रेंज नहीं है, इसका हिंदी में अनुवाद होना चाहिए, तो मैंने स्वयं इसका हिंदी में अनुवाद किया है। और मैं चाहता हूँ हमारी भाषा के लिए कि न केवल ये हिंदी में रहे बल्कि अंग्रेजी में और दूसरी भारतीय भाषाओं में जाए, तो ये मेरी भाषा के लिए, मेरे लिए, हम सब के लिए एक बड़ी बात होगी।
I'll try to translate as much as I could from Bharatji that Rajasthani writing has essentially been shying away from the transgender, from the LGBTQ, from the rainbow writings traditionally. But as Bharatji is from Hisar, it's a town in Haryana. So this story was based out of that region, the story of Belingi, and he saw transgenders begging in buses, and that's what triggered him that why is it that this plight never ends on the community. No background reading is essentially available to understand the transgender community, to understand the LGBTQ community living their lives in, especially in the Indian scenario, in the Indian social scenario. It's a very closed community. They don't believe in dialogue because they have been hurt, they have been humiliated for years and centuries. And when he reached Hanumangarh and was introduced through a friend to the transgender community, he tried to develop a dialogue with them, but he met with initial resistance. But gradually, they opened up and they accepted him as his own, and that's how this book was born. He has tried to narrate the living reality of the transgender community as far as it can be real, and he makes himself one with the subject. So the primary question that who is the insider, who is the outsider, and who has the right to speak about whom is actually very creatively dealt with in Belingi by Bharatji, because he feels that once you can make yourself one with the subject or matter of your creative writing, you can express their internal emotional landscape. And it is a story of a self-respecting transgender. It is a story of a very revivalist nature where the transgender does not go through the humiliation, and he it decides that it will not go through the plightful life and it will live a respectful life. And this is how he questions the existing constructs in the society and challenges them through his writing. आसपास हूँ चलेगा ठीक है okay coming to Chintan thank you
बेहतरीन व्याख्या की आपने
thank you Chintan you've been critiquing I mean, you're one go-to person, especially for publishers, editors like us, who want some space, who want some light to be thrown on the books we do, as far as the LGBTQ list is concerned. You are one of the rare critics who have actually opened their hearts, time, and the space in the black ink to give the rainbow color to your paper. So thank you for that. How do you feel about the space that has been allotted to you in the mainstream media as far as the book criticism or the subject matter discussion is concerned from the lists of various publishing houses, from the books that you receive?
Thank you for that poetic introduction to my work, the rainbow color and all of that. I think space has to be made. Space is not provided on a platter. If you are a queer person, you learn to make space for yourself because, that's how you not only survive but also thrive. I think a lot of, I started writing a lot more on queer lives and queer issues during the pandemic because most of us were stuck at home, right? And as someone like myself who is mainly into freelance gigs, the best thing to do was to devote all my time to writing because, there were fewer distractions. So I started approaching more and more editors about the possibility of reviewing books. I prefer to use the word reviewer than critic. Somehow critic sounds very weighty and reviewer sounds humbler. I prefer to think of myself as someone who's going to try and help the reader figure out a book that might be suitable for them. Because
Chintan, you please be the critic and the reviewer for us.
Okay.
Please. Don't do weighty things. Just be both. We need both.
I'll explain why I'm saying that because most people have limited disposable income and they need to decide what book to buy. And I think I play a role there to help them figure out whether this book is worth their time or not. But I've also, I think during the pandemic, as I saw writers talking about their struggles, just being imprisoned in their own minds, I felt like I needed to soften the way I was looking at a book. Earlier, I would think of a book only in terms of whether it's speaking to me or not. I started thinking more of how difficult it is to write a book, how difficult it is to market a book, to publish a book, to get readers interested. I think once I started putting myself in the shoes of each of those people in the publishing process, I began to think of a book more than the product of a writer's labor, but as something that comes together. In terms of editors, I think there are some editors who are very open to working on queer stories, but they need to be spoon-fed in terms of making the link. कि न्यूज़ साइकिल में ये है, so editors may not, books editors may not be aware of the hearings that are going on in the Supreme Court, or they might not be aware of what kind of what kind of conversations are happening between activists in different parts of the country. So I think as a journalist, it's my job to help them make the link because I cannot tell them, hey, why are you not aware? I think being confrontational and combative can make you feel good about yourself and can lead to a pat on the back, but doesn't really push things. And I think
It burns the bridges.
Yeah,
We don't do that.
And I have burned bridges. I've had a lot of rage in my life, and most queer people do, I guess, because we've been pushed out of so much. We want to push back. But I think I am now in a space where I feel more like creating than peace to pata nahi, but I feel more like creating than seeing what is there to be broken. Let me give you a few examples because you said you like anecdotes, right? Yes. Once I was pitching this review about a book. It was about this politician from New Zealand, and she had taken a particular stance in her country around same-sex relationships. When I sent in the review, I had talked about same-sex civil unions. And the editor was like, what is the difference between same-sex civil unions and same-sex marriages? I said, you know, they want civil unions in some countries because marriage is considered as a sacrament if you come from a Catholic background. So you want to be considered as equal in terms of citizenship, but marriage is too sacred to be to allow queer people into. So my editor was like, it doesn't really matter whether civil unions or marriages is the same thing, right? So there are times when people don't want to understand. But there are also times when people will pick up the phone and say, I don't understand this, but I think you do. You're an insider, so why don't you tell me? That happens too. And then I think my attempt has also been to try and find मतलब दुखियारी कहानी नहीं सुनानी हमेशा. I want to put stories of joy, fun, pleasure out there, and I think it takes work sometimes to do that, because whether it's Dalit people, transgender folks, Adivasis, there are people who are waiting to listen to Dukhyari Kahani and feel good about themselves कि देखो हमने platform दिया. But why is that? Why can't we listen to stories where people are just having a good time? They don't want to be thinking of their sorrow and their grief all the time. So that has been a challenge sometimes, because they want to slot you in a certain way. And then also, like, I think also to try and sneak in. I mean, this is also, again, one, you talked about the closet, right? I would say the society is in the closet. Queer people are not necessarily in the closet, because
Huge
society
round of applause
is
for
not
this.
able to come to terms with, our existence. So I think we figured out strategies. If I'm interviewing, say, I interviewed Raghuram Rajan the other day at a literature festival. His book is on India's economy. So I told him that, there's a particular economist called Lee Badgett who says that India is losing 1% of its GDP because of homophobia and transphobia. There's nothing about this in his book. But I had the opportunity to interview him. He is an economist. I have the data. I can put that in. So it's not like you have to do queer stuff only in a queer story. You can be sneaky. Yeah.
And intelligent there. भरत जी, एक बहुत ज़रूरी बात चिंतन ने बोली कही कि अंग्रेज़ी में तो रिव्यूअर और क्रिटिक अलग अलग हैं, हिंदी में तो एक आलोचक हैं. पुस्तक आपकी जब राजस्थानी में प्रकाशित हुई और अब हिंदी में बोधि प्रकाशन द्वारा प्रकाशित हुई, तो आलोचकों का इस पे क्या रुख रहा? और क्या हिंदी में रिव्यूअर और क्रिटिक अलग होते हैं?
देखिए, आलोचकों की मिलीजुली प्रतिक्रिया रही है. राजस्थानी में चूँकि ये पहला उपन्यास था तो प्रतिक्रिया ठीक रही है, लेकिन मुझे जितनी उम्मीद थी उतने मुझे लगा नहीं कि वैसी प्रतिक्रिया जो आनी चाहिए थी वो आई नहीं है. क्योंकि कोई भी किसी भी भाषा के अंदर अगर कोई नई चीज़ आती है, पहली बार कोई चीज़ आती है, तो उस पर भले ही पॉजिटिव आए भले ही नेगेटिव आए, वो अलग बात है, लेकिन उस पर खुल के चर्चा होनी चाहिए. तो जिस तरह से चर्चा होनी चाहिए थी वो हुई नहीं है. अब चूँकि हिंदी में आया है तो अब हिंदी के पाठकों की, हालांकि हमारे राजस्थानी में है और राजस्थानी के साथ एक बहुत बड़ी एक त्रासदी हो रहा है, और मैं आपके सामने भी उस पीड़ा को व्यक्त करना चाहूँगा. थोड़ा समय लूँगा थोड़ा सा. मेरा एक उपन्यास है गुड़गांठ, जातीय मुद्दों पे लिखा हुआ है कि 21वीं सदी में भी हमारे अंदर जो जातिवाद है वो किस कदर बैठा हुआ है. इस मुद्दे को लेकर के 4 दोस्तों की कहानी है. और वो जो बाद में आमिर खान ने फिल्म बनाई थी, नाम मैं उसका भूल रहा हूँ, 3 इडियट फिल्म बहुत बाद में बनी थी. ये नावल मैंने 3 इडियट की सी कहानी है, वो मैंने 2009 में लिख दिया था. और उस उपन्यास की मैंने जब यहाँ रीडिंग की, उसके बाद में जब ऑक्सफोर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी के इसके ट्रांसलेशन अंग्रेजी में छापने के लिए, मैं ये क्यों बता रहा हूँ, इसलिए बता रहा हूँ कि पीड़ा क्या है एक लेखक की, एक भाषा की पीड़ा क्या है. जब इस उपन्यास को राजस्थानी के किसी मेरे मित्र के पास भेजा गया तो उन्होंने टिप्पणी लिख करके भेज दी कि इस उपन्यास में ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि इसको अंग्रेजी में ट्रांसलेशन किया जा सके. उन्होंने मुझे भेजा कि मैं आपको नाम तो नहीं बताऊंगी कि ये किसने लिख के भेजी है, लेकिन आपके उपन्यास के ऊपर टिप्पणी नकारात्मक है. उसके बाद में कहा कि एक ट्राई और करते हैं, चूँकि इसकी चर्चा खूब हुई है, कि हिंदी में इसका आपके पास जो ट्रांसलेशन है वो आप भेजिए. मैंने हिंदी में भेजा, और हिंदी में भी जो जिस समीक्षा की टिप्पणी थी कि इस राजस्थानी के इस उपन्यास में ऐसा कुछ नहीं है जिसका ऑक्सफोर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी इसका ट्रांसलेशन करके छापे. ये क्यों हुआ? ये इसलिए हुआ कि मेरी भाषा के जिस किसी भी लेखक के पास वो किताब गई तो उसने सोचा होगा कि भी इस उपन्यास को अगर ऑक्सफोर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी में अगर ये हो जाता है तो भरत ओला हीरो बन जाएगा, तो इसको मैं हीरो क्यों बनने दूँ। और हिंदी के किसी व्यक्ति ने अगर उस पर नकारात्मक टिप्पणी दी है तो उसने कहा कि तो अगर राजस्थानी की कोई किताब है और वो हिंदी के अंदर ट्रांसलेशन होकर के जाती है तो राजस्थानी हीरो बन जाएगी। ये पीड़ा हमारे साथ, हम दोहरी मार झेलते हैं अपने लेखक के स्तर पर भी और प्रकाशक के स्तर पर। इस चीज़ का मुझे ये है कि मुझे लगता है कि बेलिंगी पे ये चीज़ नहीं होगी और ये दूसरी भारतीय भाषाओं में जाएगी, क्योंकि ट्रांसजेंडर जो मुद्दा है, जैसे मैंने पहले भी कहा कि ट्रांसजेंडर के बारे में इतनी गलत तथ्यात्मक है कि ये जब मरते हैं तो जूतों से पीटते हैं और ये मुर्दे को घसीटते हुए ले जाते हैं, और जब ये कोई आदमी इनका मर जाता है तो ये रोते नहीं हैं बल्कि हंसते हैं। इतनी तरह की गलत तथ्यात्मक बातें हैं और मैंने खोद के ट्रांसजेंडरों से पूछी है कि भी वास्तव में हकीकत क्या है। मैंने इसमें उनके रोने के जो गीत हैं, जो छापा डालते हैं, जो कोई मर जाता है, वो गीत इनमें दिए हैं, राजस्थानी में भी दिए हैं, पंजाबी में भी दिए हैं, किस तरह से वो सारी चीज़ें करते हैं। क्यों ये जो चीज़ें हैं कि और उनको दिखाई क्यों नहीं देता कि मुर्दे को जब ले जाते हैं शमशान घाट में तो वो क्यों नहीं दिखाई देते हैं। सारी चीज़ों को इसमें देने की कोशिश की है। मतलब एक तो सबसे बड़ी पीड़ा ट्रांसजेंडर के बारे में ये है कि हमारा समाज उसको स्वीकार नहीं करता है। मेरा जो कथानायक है उसका बाप एक गांव का चौधरी है और उसकी इतनी बड़ी दहशत है पूरे इलाके के अंदर, और जब उसके घर में एक ट्रांसजेंडर पैदा हो जाता है तो वो गालियाँ निकलता है कि साला हमारे घर में इंजड़ा पैदा कैसे हो गया, हम तो सोरिये साली हैं, हमारे घर में यह कैसे हो सकता है। और उस ट्रांसजेंडर के जो उसका बाप है उसके भीतर में इतना गुस्सा आता है कि वो युक्ति बनाता है कि मैं कैसे इसको ख़त्म करूं, कैसे मुझे मारना है। हर बार जब वो मारने की सोचता है कि तो इसमें तो मैं फंस जाऊंगा, सुपारी दूंगा तो भी मैं फंस जाऊंगा, और आखिर में वो उसको मारने का यत्न भी करता है। लेकिन चूँकि ये उसमें बधा हुआ था कि मुझे कुछ करके दिखाना है समाज के सामने, वो जो ट्रांसजेंडर है वो ये करके दिखाता है और अपनी बहुत लंबी कहानी है, उस कहानी के माध्यम से आखिर में वो ट्रांसजेंडर जो है वो सिर्फ एक कॉलेज, एक स्कूल और एक हॉस्पिटल सिर्फ और सिर्फ ट्रांसजेंडर के लिए बनाता है। और उसका जो वो कहता है ना कि साला, उसका बाप कहता है कि ये साला हिंजड़ा है, इन्होंने हमारा नाम डुबो दिया, हमारे ख़ानदान का नाम डुबो दिया, इससे हम क्या उम्मीद कर सकते हैं। उसी बाप से वो जो मेरे इस उपन्यास का नायक है, उसी बाप से बेलिंगी इंस्टीट्यूट के नाम से जो ट्रांसजेंडरों के लिए स्कूल है, ट्रांसजेंडर के लिए कॉलेज है और ट्रांसजेंडर के लिए हॉस्पिटल है, उसका उससे उद्घाटन करा के अपने होने का सबूत देता है कि हाँ मैं ट्रांसजेंडर हूँ, लेकिन उसके बाद भी मैं ये करके दिखा सकता हूँ समाज के सामने।
So on the question of how the critics and reviewers have responded to his book in Rajasthani, Bharatji feels that the linguistic circle has essentially been very resistant towards accepting his narrative, his book. He sent the original Rajasthani manuscript to a critic, and he was bogged down very badly. No one gave a positive review, and he also feels that his branding got marred because he was in a particular language ecosystem. Had he been a part of, say, a linguistic or a language book publishing or book reviewing circle like English, that could have opened more annals of discussion for him. I think it's got more, according to him, he thinks that it's got more to do with what the language has been receptive towards over a period of time. And that's how the books get also, can also be on the top of the charts, or can also be shoved off into darkness without any recognition. There are certain misconstructs that are spread around the transgender community. For example, when they die, it is usually considered that when they die, their dead bodies are kicked and dragged to the graveyard. But his research showed that none of it is true, and there are just the misconstructs being spread around through various populist narratives. So research is something that is lacking, and he feels that it can happen when we open the doors of the linguistic ecosystems to see, witness, accept the lived realities of the transgender community. And in his novel, the hero is a revivalist. He's an extremely strong-willed human being who builds colleges, who builds universities and schools for the transgender community and does not accept the kind of recourse, the kind of fate that has been uh, that has been chosen by the populist narratives for the transgender community. Coming to you, Kinshuk, your experience of literary reception has been on a scale of -5 to 10 plus. You have seen the range. You have been bullied on social media. You have been appreciated on social media at the same time. You've earned friends and not so many friends because of this book. Sushi Girl was the story that that actually sparked a lot of discussion, that we thought we all of a sudden saw it was everywhere on social media when the book was out. So your experiences.
Yeah, I think, the problem with LGBTQ literature or per se the Hindi sphere is that we are very much afraid of talking about desires or sex. And why we are really so afraid of talking about love, sex, or desire, the autonomy of body, that, there's certain things, certain kind of love that only is possible through the body, and this body is a medium for expression of that love. I think most languages are resistant to the idea. While we have such a rich tradition of expression of desires, but I don't know why in the contemporary literature it is very difficult to express desire. And I think one of the major reasons, when you did that erotica book, which is all about heterosexual expression of love, it is still not well received among people, because I think, what everybody was saying, bell hooks and everybody, love has that power to sort of transform, to change. And what we are doing as a society is actually to sort of impede that change to happen. And, we can broaden that to everything. And I think one of the problems of LGBTQ literature in Hindi is that, you've brought all the right ingredients, but you still haven't been able to humanize those things, So I mean, there are every possible elements, people are, they're trying to pick on all those narratives that are available, but then you're not able to actually turn them into stories. And literature, and especially stories or fiction, should be able to delve into the interiority of the characters. And one important thing that I've also realized is that often LGBTQ literature is ghettoed, So it is very important and essential to understand that LGBTQ literature cannot be only about LGBTQ. It is going to be about everything. So it is going to talk about every sort of injustice that we are, actually experiencing. So Hoshang Merchant says that, for women and for gay men, the enemy is the same, and that is the macho man, because our struggles in a way are similar.
You're speaking in a post-animal era, huh?
I disagree with that. If you want fireworks, so happy to supply that.
All yours.
Don't we have macho gay men? Like, what kind of formulation is this? Maybe Hoshang does not like macho gay men, but there are many macho gay men. I mean, just open your Grindr app and you'll find them.
No, what I'm
I
trying...
mean, if you go to Delhi and you open Grindr, there are people who are looking specifically for Jat men, So there is a certain kind of body that even gay men tend to, valorize.
He's basically speaking about the construct. That's what I understand. I'm not being his advocate, but I know what he's saying.
No, and that is something that is, problematic also among the LGBTQ spheres, because, gay men have certain privilege over so many other lesbian women, transgenders, and all of that is problematic, because then we have all these internalized homophobia where we like one kind of a body, which is macho, muscular. So that is where the literature should actually point at. It cannot I mean, it has to transcend the identity politics in order to become broader, in order to sort of encompass what literature should be doing. So Thomas McCarthy's famous novel says, that you have to, find so many stories in that one story. And that is how the multiplicity of experiences should be, in that particular story. So I think, experience has been definitely difficult, but there has been a good reception as well. And the mere fact that so many publishers, editors, agents are interested in translating the book shows that we are in a way ready to hear those narratives, but how much we accept them is the question.
So coming to the question of constructs, I think that what came out, and the ghettoization. Over to you. So constructs are the building blocks of society. Positive, negative, neutral, whatever. But without a certain idea of construct, you and I would be like headless chicken, running around everywhere. Now, it is the duty of literature to question, challenge, keep reinventing these constructs. Now, the kind of constructions I'm sure you would like to read out, because that's what I'm going to invite you to do that. But before that, let's talk about constructs and why they are problematic and why they should be, how they should be challenged as far as the LGBTQ writing is concerned.
We could talk about why they're problematic after talking about why they're useful. So constructs.
You can choose the sequence of your questions.
I think constructs are useful because human beings tend to see things through language, which necessarily means that there are labels, classifications. But if we look at those as provisional and not permanent, and do not essentialize them, then it's useful. So, for example. A term like queer. I mean, yesterday Kinshuk and I were at that Rambagh party, and we were asked, what are you doing a panel on? And we said queer literature. There was this lady who told us, but how can you use the word queer? In the 1970s, I had these friends who called themselves gay, and they used to hate the word queer. How can you use it? Are you not being disrespectful? And that was interesting because the same words that are considered offensive at a point of time are then reclaimed by a community, and we many of us proudly use the term queer. Now, some people may not engage in same-sex sex, but they still want to use the word queer because they think it's a political position and not something to do with sexual orientation. So I think we should allow for plurality of queernesses and not really, cage people into specific ways of doing queerness. Because if we're talking about queer as being non-normative, it would be strange to then fix the meaning of queer itself, because that would be becoming normative, right? The problematic bit, I think, occurs when a practice like, it's very common now to ask people to state their pronouns. So if you are in a setting where, there's a round of introductions, you're asked to say what your pronouns are. So you say he, him, they, them, she, her, ze. There are many. Yes. So, but I think it also becomes a way then of forcing people to pick one. So I don't have that poem right now, otherwise I would have read it. It's perfect for the occasion, but it's called The Queer Buddhist, and it goes something like this, that this person is asking, are you a he, him, or a they, them? No, are you a she, her? And the person says, can I not be a pronounced person? Can I be a here, now? So I think that came from my own Buddhist practice, where I felt like, if you, through your experience in meditation, you realize that the self is so slippery and is so in flux, there's nothing permanently Chintan, then does it make sense to hold on so strongly to it? And of course, we don't have time to go into why the ego is deceptive, but I sort of... But I'll quickly read the other thing that you were inviting me to read.
But just one more question before you go to the reading, Chintan. Yeah. So this whole concept of opening oneself and the society to the idea of plurality, and it's a slippery slope, we know that, because what's happening in the US, for example, and what has happened to the Olympic Committee of the women's swimming team, then where are the policy level interjections. And don't you think it's high time that apart from the emotional liberation that is the need of the hour for the community, there is what we see in the US, for example, is, I mean, I've been going through some very legitimate reports by the researchers that the way it has the queerness where the kids are behaving like animals in the classroom and they are totally under the whole overall umbrella of being queer. This whole concept has not been understood properly by a certain generation that is not even a millennial yet.
What are they doing by behaving like animals? Could you give an example? Like, what are they doing?
I just I just read this. We'll open the session. I'll just, so we just read this report in New York Times that was published in September, that 3 schools had to sit down and file a grievance that when these kids were coming to the classrooms and the teacher, for example, asked them, say what is 2 plus 2. So one of the students, they said that I am a squirrel today, so I will answer like a squirrel, and it made some gestures which were not, you know, conducive of 2 plus 2, which is not going to answer 2 plus 2, what is that? So the teachers had to go to the committee and file a complaint that, you know, this thing has to be taken care of. And they are doing some pedagogy level, policy level related research. But this is a classic example of I personally feel that queerness has been misunderstood and has been mishandled by a certain society in a certain setup, by a certain group of people. Age group of people is very of a critical importance here. So your comments on such a situation?
Yeah, I'll quickly answer. So firstly, I think squirrels are cute. Secondly, I don't know what this particular situation is. But I would like to talk about the Indian situation instead of America. I think it's easy to deflect attention from our own issues and talk about the US. But in India, we're seeing increasingly reports of queer teenagers killing themselves because they're being bullied in school. And there's a UNESCO report that Sahodaran Foundation in Tamil Nadu has collaborated on, which actually has data on the various kinds of bullying that happen in school. So this is something I think we need to address. I don't know this, I mean, you're talking about people behaving like going out of control.
Let me rephrase my question.
Yeah.
It's not about controlling or going out of control. It's about the possibility of misunderstanding a certain concept that has spiraled out and has totally unleashed a social condition that is out of anybody's control. So while I'm saying that that is out of control, I am definitely not meaning as a juxtaposition that it should be controlled in a certain way. Having said that, nothing takes away the attention from the fact that India needs immediate policy level reformation as far as accommodating the entire queer community into the mainstream of everything, so-called mainstream of everything.
And I think policy level interventions are happening. Firstly, at the corporate level, there are many corporates that are doing what is called diversity, equity, and inclusion work.
DIY, yes.
So it's not just the government that's doing, corporates are doing it, schools are doing it. I often go to schools and do workshops with teachers and children that are looking to do sensitization work. And the system or like an education board may not ask them to do it, but there are individuals who are sensitive and progressive and who feel like something should be done, and they try to create space for it too. So that happens.
That is definitely happening.
I don't know if we have time for the poem. It's going to take a minute.
Quickly one.
Okay, so this is from an anthology called Fearless Love. It's a poem called Jalal. Jalal refers to Jalaluddin Rumi. I'm responding to a poem of his. This anthology was published to commemorate 2 years of the reading down of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. We alluded to sex, but we didn't actually talk about sex. So this poem is about sex. Jalal. He asks me to be melting snow, to wash myself off myself. I heed the call, cast off my garb, walk into the hammam and wait. The stone is hot, my skin burns. Eons of tears and sweat, centuries of waiting. Now's the time, he's here. Yes, he's here. Finally, he's here. Cook me, cook me, cook me in your fire, get me ready for the feast. He says nothing, he smiles, only smiles, and asks me to lie. Eyes shut, skin on stone, eyes closed in prayer. The hands are firm and loving, they know what they're doing. My muscles relax, my nerves calm down. His fingers make mandalas, erase them. Suddenly, my spine is a column of light, and he's everywhere. I've been washed.
भरत जी, बेलिंगी से एक छोटा सा अध्याय आपसे सुनना चाहेंगे।
बिल्कुल, मैं बिल्कुल थोड़ा पढ़ूंगा क्योंकि समय की नज़ाकत है।
क्षमा याचना के
हाँ,
साथ।
नहीं, कोई दिक्कत नहीं। और मैं मनीषा जी का और पूरे लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करना चाहता हूँ कि मुझे ये मौका दिया। देवल साहब का भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि इस चीज़ को सुझाया। मैं संक्षेप में पढ़ देता हूँ। जो बेलिंगी अपनी डायरी लिखता है बीच बीच में, मैं डायरी के थोड़ा सा अंश पढ़ता हूँ। पापा, क्या मैं आपसे पूछ सकता हूँ कि आप मुझसे इतनी घृणा क्यों करते हैं? मैं जान सकता हूँ, लेकिन आपका उत्तर होगा, कोई जानने की ज़रूरत नहीं, तूने हमारे ख़ानदान का नाम कटवा दिया। लेकिन पापा, इसमें मेरा क्या कसूर है? मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? मैंने खुद कभी नहीं चाहा कि मैं इस रूप में जन्म लूँ। मैं आपके दुख और गुस्से को समझ सकता हूँ, लेकिन मैं क्या करूँ? मैं मानता हूँ कि मैं आपका बेटा नहीं बन सकता जो आप चाहते हैं। लेकिन पापा, क्या आपने कभी मेरा दुख समझने की कोशिश की? क्या कभी आपने मुझसे पूछा कि बेटा तुम्हें क्या तकलीफ़ है? क्या तुम क्या चाहते हो? लेकिन आपने तो कभी महसूस ही नहीं किया, कोशिश भी नहीं की। कोशिश की छोड़िए, ऐसा नहीं है कि मैंने ये सोचा नहीं, मैंने अनेक बार सोचा है पापा मैं आपसे बात करूं, लेकिन मैं कैसे कर सकता था पापा? आपसे बात करने का मतलब था घर में हंगामा खड़ा करना, कलेश पैदा करना, मेरी या माँ की पिटाई करना। आप कहते हैं कि लंबरदार मेहताब सिंह के ख़ानदान में साला हिजड़ा कैसे पैदा हो सकता है, लेकिन इसमें मेरा क्या कसूर है? मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? अगर मेरा दिल लड़की का है तो मैं लड़का कैसे बन सकता हूँ पापा? प्लीज़ पापा।
बहुत धन्यवाद। If my heart is of that of a girl, how can I behave like a boy? That's the summary of the excerpt. Over to you, Kinshuk.
Okay, so I'm reading a small poem. It's a longer poem. I'll read some excerpts from it. So it's called, Dear Radio Resident, tell me how to look at you and not feel the fuzz of a dissolving discipline in me. How to not stand beside you, your hands clasping the jellied probe, your eyes scanning for the screen for signs of life in that bloated stomach, and believe that blanket of your breath is enough. How to not think of the elbow graze, the soft touch of your thumb as a prayer of a man who has lost everything. The night is raucous with engines, headlights glistening like eyes of a cat, and I'm exhausted with desire. I want love that happens through taut tendons, morsels of muscles. I want love that makes its way in the pockets of the heart. It is absurd to know how much this body wants, how gluttony, greedy this heart is. In my dream, we kiss in the middle of the road. Scarred faces dabbed in bhagwa, honking Jai Shri Ram surround us. The homes we try to hide in become closed doors, stairs, heaps of bricks. The scaffold of hands about to cup us turn limp. The sky freckled with tan grey cloud rumbles. My forehead sweat-soaked, feet trembling like fins of a starved fish. Before I keep my hands at the thumping heart, I look at them, how the fingers are curled as if there is still something to clasp onto. What is love except this body's way of knowing that it can think of the other body as a cathedral? The screech of horn brings back this word, this anti-love word, this word of slippery morals, this word where mediocrity is the happiest. It goes on and on, but I will read this much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and pricks. Manisha ji, thank you so much for curating this session as the opening session of Jaipur Bookmark. It means a lot to us, it means a lot to the community, and the message from the Jaipur Bookmark is just so beautifully colorful rainbow this year. Thank you so much.